You are listening to the Urban Sports Scene and Black Sports Insiders. Just check us out at urbansportscene.com. Also, check us out on the World Wide Web at www.empiremedia.com. Again, the Urban Sports Scene is part of Black Sports Insiders. And today, family, I am excited. We have a big time show planned for you. The MEAC Conference, the Mid Eastern Athletic Conference, something that I take a lot of pride in as I'm a UMES graduate, been part of the MEAC conference for over 20 years, and we have almost, I guess, a century of worth of experience joining me today. As you can see, we have former SID or retired SID and sports historian, Mr. Bill Hamilton from South Carolina State. Same thing at Howard, the retired SID, former SID, but still working, both of them, Mr. Ed Hill from Howard University and the voice of Morgan State. You already know what it is. You know, strangers to this program, Mr. Lamont Germany. Family, thank you for joining me again. It's a pleasure to have all three of you.
Good to be
Appreciate
on.
you joining us, man. Thank you so much for the invitation. Making me feel important. Thank you, Rob.
So I'm a little bit younger than y'all, so I don't know everything. But that's partly why I have you guys joining me today. And also, I want you to share with our audience. And I guess I'm going to start with Mr. Hamilton. The first question I have for you is, in your many years of experience being part of this conference at South Carolina State, what are some of the greatest athletes across any sport, could be basketball, football, swimming, that you've gotten to see as part of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference? Doesn't have to just be South Carolina State.
Okay, yeah, I can go down. That's a really outstanding list. I will start at South Carolina State with a couple of Pro Football Hall of Famers, of course, Harry Carson and Donnie Shell, two of the great defenders with South Carolina State. But there's been, many more. You talk about Florida A&M with the great talent they've had there. Of course, Bob Hayes in track and field. And from there, you might want to go to basketball, Marvin Webster, the human eraser, and of course, some of the guys that did so well up at A&T, like Joe Binion, and at Howard, of course, the current track and field coach there, Ed, help me with his name.
David Oliver.
David Oliver, the great, we remember him as an Olympian. So it's been just a ton of talent, and HBCUs. We have really established quite a legacy, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Hill, you can go next. I'll say the best for last, right, Mr. Germany?
Now, well, it's so interesting because, believe it or not, Bill Hamilton is a mentor of mine and helped me transition through not just my early years of trying to figure things out, but from time to time, he was that mentor when I could share war stories with, and he'd give me some military advice and how to deal with. So, but listening to that question is very interesting because I had a chance to see Harry Carson play. One time they played Howard at RFK Stadium. And I wasn't even SID then, but I went to the game because I followed HBCUs. And he is probably, in my opinion, the most dominant player that's ever played in a conference. He was a three-time first-team All-Conference, I think twice, Bill, correct me, Player of the Year. And
Right.
it wasn't just so much the honors. I watched them dominate. And in case you didn't know, he was not a linebacker. He was a linebacker with the Giants when they drafted him.
Mm.
But at South Carolina State, he was a defensive lineman, and he would literally throw 300-pound offensive linemen like they were rag dolls. I mean, he would just dominate. And there were so many others. I thought that Earl Holmes at Florida A&M was one of the most dominant players. Uh,
Indeed.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story. I'm gonna get to the rest of them. So Howard is playing. This is 1995, and Howard is playing Florida A&M up at Howard, and they had a running back named Stephen Mosley at Howard who was highly touted coming out of Florida, and he was a rookie but very talented, and so so Larry Holmes is that guy, that linebacker. He was big. He's about 240, about 6'3", and he was athletic and kind of nasty on the football field. So in that game, Ted White, the Hall of Fame quarterback for Howard was a freshman, and he decided not to play. He didn't like playing with the rib pads because he felt they were too restrictive to him in his movement. So during the game, Earl Holmes tackled a Ted, and he ended up with a lacerated kidney, and he didn't play the
Whoa.
rest of the year. Stephen Mosley, while talented, he wasn't a big guy. He's about 5'9", about 180, shifty. So Earl Holmes hits him on the sideline, and he's laying there writhing in pain. And Earl looks over the top and said, "It hurt, don't it?" And then he looks, and then he turns over to Steve Wilson, the coach, and he said, "Steve," he said, "Coach, you need to get some men out here. These are boys."
Earl
Yeah,
Holmes, I remember him.
yeah, he was a grown man out there. But Bill talks about Marvin, the human eraser, and I remember Joe Binion and at Howard, of course, Larry Spriggs is, I think, perhaps the only MEAC player that's played on a world championship. He played on Lakers with Magic Johnson, that group, in Delaware State with John Taylor. I got a chance to watch him and Gene Lake. I mean,
Yep.
and like Bill said, there's so many, and Bill and I were on a committee for the MEAC, and we had to put together help for compile lists for the top 50 in every sport. And in addition to that,
That was
we were
tough.
along with Joe McIver, we had to put together what is now currently the records book in the
Right.
MEAC, and all the individual team records for all of it. And it's amazing when you know about these things as you work, but once you sort of assign to do the research, it's just amazing what kind of talent has come out of this conference since 1971 when it was formed.
Before you go to Lamont, I need to back up a little bit. There was a guy at Maryland Eastern Shore named Carl Harrison. Man, we could not block that guy. He was a dominant defensive player, one of the most dominant. Went on to the league, had a great time, and I can remember the year that that the Maryland Eastern Shore, when they were ranked. I think UPI had them ranked what, number 20 in the nation or something. When they had the great team, who were some of the guys on that? Granville, Cannon, Ed, you remember who was that
Jo,
guard on that?
you talking that basketball
The
squad they had?
basketball team, the
Oh,
basketball team.
in
Yeah,
fact, three of the players it was Joe Pace, who
yep,
ended up playing because
In the
Joe
NBA.
had transferred from college,
yep.
and
There was
Joe
a guy,
played
a
with
guard
the
that went to
Wizards.
Seattle.
Yeah, that was Ruben. Ruben went with Portland. They called
Yeah.
him Ruben Tuna Fish.
Who was the guy went to
And then
Seattle?
it was Tarvis Williams. That's when he could really shoot the basketball, good defender. But three of those players off of that team ended
Went to the
up in the
NBA.
NBA. And a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people don't know
remember.
that because Maryland Eastern Shore was at one time Maryland State, and
Yeah,
then they became a unit. They gained university stuff. And it's interesting, Bill. You're talking about Carl Harrison, who had a tremendous career in NFL. I think with the Atlanta Falcons. But also on that team was George Knock, who ended
yeah,
up playing with the Washington Redskins as a starting running back. So those are most people that hear about the NBAC don't think about the current institutions, and they don't really identify with Maryland Eastern Shore prior to receiving university status. But there
yeah.
again, there's talent that was there.
All right, Lamont, top that.
Well, I'm just going to agree with everything that Bill and Ed said, but I'm going to go ahead and chime in with some athletes from each of the schools represented: South Carolina State, Howard, and Morgan. My favorite athletes from each of those schools in my 44 years now of being associated as a broadcaster with the MEAC. And I'll start with South Carolina State. And my favorite Bulldog in any sport, just his demeanor, his smarts, his attitude, his will to win. Moo Blakeney was the man.
I tell you, at basketball, wow,
can't,
you're right.
we can't end this without mentioning Moo. Uh,
Yep.
I remember his basketball pedigree like it was yesterday. And every time Morgan State would match up against South Carolina State, we had a serious Moo problem. We didn't know what to do with Moo. And
Okay.
we never did figure it out until after he finally moved on. But he was the kind of player, Ray, it wasn't just about the stats. It,
Mm.
he was more art than science. If you just
Yeah.
look at the numbers, you might not be completely blown off the map. But if you watch Moo play the game, control the game, control the tone and the pace, get his teammates involved, get on my back, and we're gonna win this thing. And that was during the years where South Carolina State and Coppin used to go at the top.
Battle of the East. Yes, indeed. Yep.
That was the rivalry. The rest of us wanted to be there. We were just spectators watching Fame and Side go at it. And the difference maker for South Carolina State, I think, was definitely Moo Blakeney, and he is one of my all-time favorite athletes at South Carolina State. One of my all-time favorite MEAC athletes in any sport. With Howard, they had a running back whose nickname was Silk. His name was Harvey Reed,
Yep.
and the nickname fit his style. He was so smooth as a running back, Ray. It was like water coming out of a faucet smooth.
Mm.
Yeah.
It looked effortless. He was my probably favorite MEAC athlete to watch perform.
Mm.
Just give the ball to Silk and let him do his thing. He had built-in magic. He had that built-in running back DNA, and he had the numbers, but there were probably some backs that had better numbers. But just an athlete who was worth the price of admission. I don't know how you get any better than Harvey Reed in my book, either then or now. So it's Moo for South Carolina State for me. It's Harvey Reed, my favorite all-time Bison athlete. And at Morgan State, we had a quarterback about 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, just had a chance to catch up with him recently on a local radio show that I do here in Baltimore. He played quarterback for Morgan State University. And before I even give you his name, this guy so athletic. They wanted to get the ball in his hands. So they actually had him returning kicks. I
Wow.
don't know how much football you've watched, but I don't know if you could point to another football player on any level, starting quarterback, who was also returning kickoffs.
Wow.
The nickname was the Big Show. Anytime he touched the ball,
I
Brad
remember.
Little John, I knew it.
was going to put on.
I remember
show.
him.
And here's the thing: he was built like a linebacker. If you actually see him
Yep.
face to face, he's like 6'3", 240, 250. You look at him, you say, "Oh, he's a middle linebacker." No, he's a quarterback. Run like a deer. Had a rocket right arm. Had tremendous athleticism. Could fly like the wind. And in terms of just pure athletic talent, probably my favorite athlete at Morgan State. So I got to go with the Big Show, Bradshaw. I got to go with my man Silk, Harvey Reed, and I can't leave out.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, Harvey Reed, he was the leading Russian MEAC for years. He held that honor for so many
for
years.
20 years. And also, just to add, just another one of them these stories that's going to be in my book. So Harvey came out of Southridge High School in Miami. So Earl Humes, who Bill knows very well, was
Yep.
an assistant under Coach Jeffries. He was from Miami. So he went down to Southridge High School in Miami and Gainesville. And he got, of course, the little general that both of y'all remember, Lee DeBose. But
Yep.
what happened with the Harvey Reed situation, Southridge ended up number 2 in the nation. So because there's coaching in Don Soldridge, he had almost guaranteed these guys to FBS schools, including Michigan for Harvey Reid. And this is true story. So Harvey goes out to Ann Arbor for the visit. And he gets there, and first of all, he's a Miami guy, and anybody that goes on those visits like in December, January will tell you in Ann Arbor it is brutally cold. First, that was the first thing. And the second thing was Harvey, when they had breakfast the next morning, he asked them about grits. And they said, grits, what is that? And he so in that southern brawl, he said, when they said that, Mr. Hill, I know I couldn't go there. So so Earl Humes convinced him and Leon Brown and Fred Killings and all those guys that were great players to come to Howard, which had been 1-9 the year before Coach Jeffries came.
Yep.
By 1987, they went 9-1, won the MEA first ever MEAC championship, and they were sort of they got it wasn't a fair deal. They finished 9-1, and they were ranked nationally, but the parties and the powers that be decided they weren't good enough to make the playoffs. And
I
actually,
remember.
people don't really know this, Ray, but Howard University in 1987 filed a lawsuit against the NCAA
Mm.
about discrimination, and I never will forget it. They were going to stop it was then 1AA playoffs because Howard, based upon all this, research, the legal part of it, they should have been in there. So I never forget, we went before the judge, and the judge was a black judge, and he made the decision, but he clarified it by saying, you know what? I gotta go in the interest of time and expediency. We can't stop it. He said, but I'm telling you, that case is a very, very strong case. But I was just saying all that because that's kind of a backdrop. And Harvey had a lot to do with that turnaround from 1-9 to 9-1.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I could jump in real quick, Ray, before
Please
you
do.
start getting emails and get beat up on, I just want to know that we also got love for the ladies. Me,
Mm.
Bill, Ed, and I just want to throw out some females who are extraordinarily accomplished in the history of this conference, both as student athletes, and we've had some outstanding female coaches over the years in the MEAC. And I'm going to start there with the women's basketball coach from back in the day at Howard. And this was when Howard's women's team were dominant. I mean, if you
Yep.
go back
Unbeatable.
and you look up in the rafters, you see a lot of those banners. There's a few of them that are men, but most of those are the ladies just winning games and taking names year in and year out. And Tanya Tyler, who was the head coach for the overwhelming majority of those championships, really helped put not just Howard basketball on the map, but MEAC basketball on the map. And this is a coach who did it year in and year out, over and over again, always stepping on the court with the target on her back because she had something everybody wanted. We want to be you. And she wasn't about giving it up. And she held on to it for an exceedingly long period of time. We didn't have too many wins over Coach Tyler.
I remember
when I was doing her games while at Morgan State University. And there's a female athlete that I also like to highlight in a sport that's a little off the radar, but we had a softball player at Morgan State named Tanisha Kemp. She played about 25 years ago. And I think that she's probably, I don't think I'm going on a limb when I say overall, probably the best softball talent that the MEAC has ever produced. She played shortstop, came to Morgan from California, Sacramento, California. And Ray, she could do it all. She could hit, she could run, she could throw. And at shortstop, that's where all the action is. So you're getting all the plays. And she would make all the plays. And there was a time when she was overlooked a little bit. And Bill Hamilton didn't like that. Even though Bill Hamilton is a bulldog, he saw Tanisha Kemp. And he said, how come Tanisha not in the MEAC Hall of Fame? We need to do something about that. And so it was Bill Hamilton's initiative. in that
Yeah.
women's sport, softball, that said we need to do the right thing. And
There you
she's
go.
MEAC Hall of Fame today, due in large part not only to her talent and accomplishments, but to Bill Hamilton recognizing it and making sure those talents got honored.
Yeah, because we had some great women athletes that were overlooked. Now at South Carolina State, Roberta Williams, of course, was our greatest player. I'll tell you a little quick story of when we won the AIAW National Championship, that predated the NC2A run in women's basketball. We won out in it was in Fargo, North Dakota, the coldest place I've ever been, but I got warm memories from there. We beat Dayton of Ohio. They had two All-Americans, Beverly Crusoe and Ann Donovan, and we had two All-Americans, and Roberta Williams and Margaret English. She was Alex English's sister. We had been runners-up the year before. We lost to High Point in overtime, and we sitting there. Dayton went up by 5 with about 2:37 left in the game. I tell the reporter from the state newspaper, "Look, Gene, look like we're gonna be bridesmaids the second year in a row." And he said, "Well, Bill, we got 2 minutes and something left." And by that time, Roberta Williams threw up one from the corner. Looked like it was gonna hit the side of the backboard, but it went in, pop. So now we're down by 3. We go down to court, and
Did he freeze? Look like his screen might be frozen. Hopefully, we'll get him back.
Yeah,
But
you
I'm
know,
enjoying
Ray,
this. Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
I was going to say, a very few people know why they changed the rule for overtime in college football.
Mm.
And they changed it because of two MEAC schools. And I think it was the Circle City Classic, and it was Hampton under Joe Taylor, and it was Florida A&M under Billy Joe. And the game went into 8 overtimes. The game lasted so long that BET, which was doing the game, they left the air after the first overtime.
Wow.
I don't know if people know that the next year the NCAA Rules Committee got together and they put in what is now the overtime rule for college football. It was an unbelievable game. It was crazy, zany plays, like the ball, bounced in the end zone and then somebody fell on it. And like it was never going to end. And ultimately, FAMU ended up winning the game.
Man, hopefully we get Mr. Hamilton back. Of course, Bill Hamilton. This is a wealth of knowledge. This is why I brought this together. I'm learning so much in this short period of time, and time is rolling. But you know what? I want to ask this next question. I only have one additional question. We gotta do this again, guys. I know everybody has schedules to keep up, but we'll get back together. Like I said, I'm learning a whole lot. And I hope those who are listening are learning as well and getting that history of such a rich tradition of the Mid Eastern Athletic Conference, also known as the MEAC. So I want to ask you to Joe Gilliam. Now he's not a MEAC quarterback, however, he was somebody who my man Kyle Mosley said he was better than Terry Bradshaw, but for different reasons didn't get the opportunities. I want to ask y'all along those lines, what are some guys you can think of, or maybe a guy or female, whoever, that was extremely super talented, better than some of our well-known athletes in history, but they didn't get the same opportunities for different reasons back in those days, man? Maybe it's 70s, 80s. I don't know, whatever you want to share. I can go in reverse this time. I'll start with you, Lamont.
Absolutely, man. It's easy for me. There's a defensive lineman at Morgan State, played in the 90s. His name was Willie Thompson, and he was an absolute beast on the defensive front for Morgan State. It was his line of scrimmage. You only crossed the line of scrimmage if he gave you permission to cross the line of scrimmage. He was dominant, down for down, play for play, could get after the quarterback, chase down the fastest, swiftest quarterback, shut down the run game. He was a sideline guy. He was a consummate defensive tackle. He had a heart condition, though. And when NFL scouts were taking a peek at him, they had him go through a multitude of physicals. And ultimately, it was determined that it would be too much of a risk for them to even draft Willie. And so he didn't get the opportunity on the NFL level. But I think this is clearly a talent that could have exceeded in the National Football League and played for pay on Sundays. And Ray, I'm just going to give you this one extra bonus, even though you didn't ask. Uh, my favorite MEAC moment since in any sport, since I've been associated with the conference for almost a half a century. For me, it's been 44 years.
Wow.
And for me, Ray, it still is Coppin's win in the NC2A tournament over South Carolina. The MEAC has had multiple wins since in the tournament, but Fang Mitchell and Coppin State kind of set the tone when they beat South Carolina to record the first ever MEAC win in the big dance. Coppin, of course, as mentioned, led by Fang Mitchell, the head coach. I kind of have a personal connection. Coppin, of course, here in Baltimore. I'm in Baltimore. They were our rivals. But that particular game played in my hometown. I'm from Pittsburgh. That particular regional was in Pittsburgh. And I went to the regional in Pittsburgh, and Coppin became the adopted team of Pittsburgh. Pittsburghers had never heard of Coppin State. But when they beat South Carolina, they played Texas in the next round. And the entire arena of Pittsburghers was rooting for Coppin State. All the buzz across Pittsburgh was about Coppin State. All the gear that you saw people wearing in Pittsburgh was about Coppin State. And they came back close to going to the Sweet 16 and beating Texas in the next round. But for me, that lives in my memory as my MEAC moment when Coppin beat South Carolina in the tournament.
All right, Mr. Hill, it's on you, man. Let me know.
So I'm not going to go with a MEAC. I'm against the grain, but when I first saw Steve Air McNair, Howard played them out in the Circle City Classic. And so I'm there at the game, sitting in press. I got there early. So there's a scout there from the New York Giants. So we're talking and watching the pregame warm-ups and all that. So I said, well, who are you scouting? He says, well, there's Torrance Small, and I got to think of the other one. Anyway, there was two wide receivers for Alcorn State. And Torrance Small, and both of them played in Cedric Hillman. That's Cedric Tillman, I'm sorry. So he was telling me when you scout like that, the difference. He said Small was more an athletic guy that could do other things besides being a receiver. He was athletic. He said, whereas Tillman was more of a possession type guy with his size. And both of them were 6'2", 6'3", whatever, like. And so he and I watching, right? But as the game progressed, they've got this freshman quarterback. And I'm watching him in the warm-ups, and he's throwing darts down the field 40 yards. I'm like, oh, timeout. So both of us looked at the roster, and I said, he can't be a true freshman. And he was like, nah, this got to be wrong, right? So he torched Howard for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns and added another 67 yards rushing. So from that point on, Howard was intrigued by him, so we played them twice more. They won that game 46-27. The next time Howard played them was at Green Stadium. And I hyped the game. I called Mike Wilbon, who was on the reporters at that time. I said, man, you got to come to this game. This is going to be because Jay Walker was Howard's quarterback. So Howard jumps on top of them 32-6. And it's the biggest crowd in the history of Howard. They had people on the rooftops of the School of Business. They had people outside the gates, everybody trying to get in. So it's 32-6. So there was a player who played he was all safety. He was always messing or joking and stuff. So somehow he stole McNair's lucky towel before halftime and took it to his mother. Man, that big mistake. The second half, he was a grown man. He was throwing people off of him, stiff-arming. And I never forget the final play of the game, Howard had backed them up. It was a 4th and about 13 from his own 26. He dropped back out of shotgun, and he didn't heave it. He tossed it a pass. It went out. It went all the way out. They had a big wide receiver named Marcus Singleton. He's about 6'6". I mean, he was killing the whole game. The ball was in the air. Marcus is running the route. He's at the back of the end zone, and the ball is literally inches off of his fingertips out of bounds. And look, so during this time, you get a sense of what's going on. So the crowd was in a frenzy, and it's like, oh, and when he dropped, it was like, I mean, so the final score was 38-36. But what
Whoa.
happened? That was his junior year, and so the next year, Derek Hackett was the sports information director at Alcorn State. Didn't have a lot of resources. I said, look, man, this brother right here, we got to push him for Heisman Trophy. I don't know if he gonna get it. I don't know. And so what I did, I compiled a list of media all across the country that I knew and stuff like,
Wow.
and we started sending stuff out. So he got in the conversation, and I think he in third on the Heisman list, and that's the highest any HBCU quarterback has gotten there. But let me add, I know we get on time, it's short, but I
Okay.
got to tell you the story, my best game in all the years that I was at
Okay.
Howard for 33 years. So it's 1993. Howard is 4-0. North Carolina A&T is 4-0. So the USA Today at that time had a small college game of the week. They would profile it like this is on, So that particular week before, we played A&T for their homecoming, by the way. Howard played Townsend State, which was a perennial 1AA championship. They had played them twice, never beat them. So in this game, Howard is down, and Jay Walker engineers like a 6-play, 70-yard drive on a big third down. He hit Flea. It was a third down and
Mm.
12, and he hit it for 13 yards. Flea got out of bounds. So on a second down in their territory, Jay Walker hits Jermaine Kahn, who had transferred in from Mississippi Ole Miss as the newcomer of the year in the Southeast Conference. So he hadn't caught a pass all year long. He catch the game-winning touchdown, right? So the next week, the game is because both the teams are undefeated. It's North Carolina's A&T homecoming. And the thing I remember, the vivid thing was that before the game, BET, which I had talked to back in July, and I said, man, you all got to come do Howard. They're going to have this kind of team, Flea and Jay and all
Mm.
these guys. And they were like, oh, it's not really an attractive game for us to come. So
Wow.
true story. The Thursday before the game, they called us up with the AD and said, look, we've got to do this game. We've got to do this game. So we do the game. So we go down to an A&T, and Bill probably experienced this before. I don't know if you have or not, Lamont, but they call it a furniture mart. So the furniture mart kind of takes over that area of North High Point, Greensboro, and all stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
the hotel we had to stay in a hotel in Burlington, North Carolina. And so we get down there. So when we get to the game, it's about 11 a.m. for a 1 o'clock game. We coming in, there are 5,000 people outside who don't have tickets. Because
Wow.
this game was like that. So I work my way in, we get inside the crowd. So Jesse Jackson, who's an Aggie, is in the press box, right?
Yeah.
The place is packed. They got people on the sideline. If the fire marshal came in, they just shut it down. So Howard jumps on top 21-7. A&T comes back and goes up 35-21, fourth quarter. So
Oh
Jay
man.
led them down to 2 touchdowns to tie the game. So this was the first year, I'm sorry, it was the second year of the new overtime method that I talked about earlier. So Howard had been in one. They beat South Carolina State 20-17 on a
Yeah.
field goal. Down that was the first one ever in the MEAC. So Howard was used to. So the A&T people like, well, what is this? Because they weren't familiar with it, right? So you get the ball. So A&T got the ball, and from the 25-yard line, they tried a field goal and it went wide right. Howard gets the ball at the 25-yard line, and I'm gonna pick it up, and I probably can't do as well as Lamont can. So it's the late Mel Swan and Spencer Gwynn are doing the
Yeah.
game, and
Great
so
radio
Mel
duo.
said,
Mm.
Walker, is under center. He looks over the Aggie defense. He's barking out signals. He gets a snap. He's running. He's running. He scores. So look, so Ray, Aggie Stadium, which had over 26,000 people, with the exception of a few Howard people, became silent. And it was like surreal because they were like, please tell us that we got another chance, that we didn't just lose the Howard in a game like this. And so meanwhile, the always late arriving Howard University band didn't have a place to sit because A&T sold out the band section. Howard comes in, they perform at halftime, and as if you wrote a script, right, for something like this, Jay Walker scores in the end zone where the band is, and a wild celebration is set off.
Wow.
So that was, Mama, you have to experience that, and Jesse Jackson was running up and down the press box and stuff, and all of that. It was so just, the Aggies was sitting there in a state of shock, like, please tell us that. But that's probably one of my more memorable moments.
Yeah.
Wow.
I lost y'all for a while. I guess y'all noticed.
Yeah,
that.
let me tell you the question, so that way you can chime in here. And then I got one more question. I'm gonna let y'all get out of here. This has been great. So I was mentioning Joe Gilliam and how I was told, my man Kyle Mosley told me that he was a better quarterback than Terry Bradshaw, but for different reasons didn't get the opportunities. So the question was, what's maybe one athlete, male or female, that you could think of in the history of the MEAC or HBCUs that they were a great athlete and should have been a star maybe at the pro level, but didn't get that same opportunity?
Well, I think certainly at South Carolina State, we had a guy here that we certainly thought could do some of the things that Harry Carson and Donnie Shell did, but he had some issues, and his name was and he did the make all conference. His name was Rudy Bryant, was a great player. He just didn't. He wasn't a real smart guy, so times he would not know his assignments. But all the scouts that came, they wanted this guy, and they actually drafted him, and they gave him a chance. They tried to do everything they could to and tune him to the system and all, but eventually they had to let him go. And he was one of the most talented athletes that we've ever had here. And it was kind of like a tragedy because we all thought that he was going to be the next Harry Carson or the next Donnie Shell, but he did not.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. So I did have one last question. Hopefully you guys, have enjoyed this just as much as I have. I'm learning. So this has been exciting for me. But my last question is, I mean, you all have been around for a long time. The MEAC is a much smaller conference now. I mean, I've heard chatter that it's going to grow again, add some more institutions. I'm not going to throw any names out there, but
right.
I want to be careful. The great Connell Maynard told me, he said, man, you know how sensitive this generation is.
Yeah.
But for you all comparing, I'll start with you, Mr. Hamilton, comparing today's MEAC to the MEAC that you knew years ago, maybe back when you got started or throughout your years. What's the biggest difference about back then in comparison to today's MEAC?
Well, I think it's probably toughness. The new guys here, they do a lot of finesse. Not too many schools back when the MEAC started were a great passing team. We were brutal running team, especially North Carolina Central. They kind of dominated early. I remember they came down here, and Thomas Saxon was a part of that. Who coached here was a part of their offensive line. It was almost like they were holding hands at offensive line, down that because they were so dominant, And of course, later on, South Carolina State came back. And of course, Jefferson, when he came here, he took all his best players and he put them on defense. So we were the best defensive team in the country. Every year in 1AA, you're going to see South Carolina State, Alcorn, and maybe another, PWI. But it was just unbelievable. And one year, and I think it was the year 1975, a 10-game schedule, we gave up 29 points. 29 points, and we had 6 shutouts, and that's probably a record never be broken because coaches are too offensive minded then. But I just think we weren't as big as some of the teams are now, but I just think we were tougher, and we had a pedigree that we had a slouch. I mean, we were just tough, and I think the toughness now. These new kids, they are good. And, that goes to the thing. Football has changed. They've changed the rules and made it easier for the protect them guys. But back then, those guys did not have the protection the people have now, but they were great football players and they got a lot accomplished.
All right.
For me, Ray, and I'll make it quick. I know we're up against time.
Yeah.
I just miss some of the institutions that have left the conference. Some of the rivalries that we had across the board in all sports. The Florida schools, Florida A&M and Bethune. Miss those trips and those regular engagements. Hampton and North Carolina, A&T, no longer in the conference. Even Savannah State, even though they were in the conference for an abbreviated time, I miss those rivalries, those connections, because the MEAC to me is about the rivalries and about the people, and you miss those rivalries and you miss those people. My hope is that maybe one or two of those institutions may ultimately come back home, but that's the biggest distinction. Once upon a time we're in the MEAC and aren't any longer in the MEAC.
All right. Well, thank you guys for just allowing us to have your time, first of all, because again, I know you all have busy schedules, and I appreciate everything you shared. I know it's a lot more you all can share. That's why I said we got to do this again. I knew this was going to happen where it wasn't going to be enough time. But you know what? This was great for me. I hope it was great for our listeners. Lamont, hopefully I'll see you November 2nd, Norfolk State, Morgan State. Mr. Hamilton, I don't know, man. I got to get down there. People excited about Chinnisbury, maybe the Celebration Bowl. We'll see.
We'd love to be there. He's excited. Sometimes he reminds me of more of a Baptist preacher than a football coach.
Yeah, he is dynamite, and both teams doing good. Hey, I just want to say too, Lamont, I'm so glad that Morgan State was able to have their homecoming. Just put on a great performance. I know the competition wasn't the highest level, but still the team looked good. Deuce looked good at quarterback. And that was great to see, man, after what happened last year for homecoming there at Morgan State.
Right.
So I'll be seeing you guys. I'll see Mr. Hill hopefully at American University on October the 28th, I think. The American University basketball team scrimmages Howard that day. So, gentlemen, like I said, this was a blessing. Don't be strangers to our show and our program, and I will catch you guys, like I said, in the near future. Thanks again.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, how do we follow you how do we follow you?
Oh, man. You can check us out. We're on all social media platforms. Just search Urban Sports Scene. You can also go to YouTube. We're there at Urban Sports Scene. Check us out. Instagram, Facebook. Check out our Urban Sports Scene Facebook page. Also, like I said, we're part of Black Sports Insiders. Go on to Twitter. Check out Black Sports Insiders. HBCU Go, the Urban Edge Network. We're on so many platforms, man. .com. There's many places to follow us. We're out there, and definitely check us out.
I will. Thanks.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Again, I appreciate you guys, and for all that you brought to the table there. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed it as well, man. Have a blessed one, y'all.
Thank you.